Numinous Podcast with Carmen Spaniola.
Hi there, and welcome to the Numinous Podcast, where we have interesting conversations with everyday folks about the mystery of life. This podcast is a complement to the Numinous School, an online intuition development course for people who want their self-awareness to serve a greater good. I'm your host, Carmen Spaniola, and this week my guest is Mark Silver. Mark is a fourth-generation entrepreneur, and he's also the founder of The Heart of Business, which is kind of like a wisdom academy for entrepreneurs. He offers coaching, marketing instruction, and all kinds of programs for small business. He's also a master teacher in his Sufi lineage. I caught up with Mark over Skype. He was at home in Oregon. So, Mark, did you have a religious upbringing? I'm wondering what it was like in your household as a young person spiritually.
It's a great question. I did have a religious upbringing, if you want to call it that. I guess because religion and spirituality can sometimes be forced in that way. I grew up Jewish. I grew up in a Jewish household, and I had my bar mitzvah, and I, went to Hebrew school up until my bar mitzvah. But we weren't religious. We didn't celebrate Shabbat. We didn't go to synagogue except on the high holy days. And we were in the, if you know about Judaism at all, we were conservative, meaning that it's kind of like the second level. There's Reformed, which is kind of like the least observant in terms of the traditional rules, and then conservative is more observant, and then there's the Orthodox. And so we were in conservative, and so not a lot. And at the same time, I think like many children that I've heard, I heard from, I had a real wondering and openness and belief in something, right? In God and in spirit. And, I didn't have the language for it, but I remember feeling connected at some point about that.
Mm-hmm. I'm actually reading to my daughter right now. We read each other books. She's 11, and we're reading the book "Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret" by Judy Bloom. And
Right.
I'd forgotten, I read that when I was her age, and I'd forgotten about this whole part about God. It's right in the title, but she's praying. She talks to God, and she doesn't know what she wants to be because she's growing up with no religion.
Mm-hmm.
But all her friends are either Christian or Jewish. And so it's like, well, what do we do? I want to belong. So did you talk to God?
Did I talk to God?
Yeah.
My understanding now is that we're always talking to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so I would say yes. At the time, I probably did. I have to admit that my memory of my childhood is not so crystal clear, right? I don't, um, I mean, my memory's not blanked out, but if you, I don't often find myself recalling in great detail, oh, this thing or that thing. I get, if we delve into it, I might have some things arise, but
I'll just put you in my hypnotherapy chair and we'll just
yeah, I know, kind of bringing some of that back, but, I mean, I do remember, having some prayer, and I remember, wanting the prayer to be, to work. And I think it was, I think it's just the kind of, a lot of that standard disconnection between, okay, so there's these words on the page in a prayer book versus, okay, I'm having trouble feeling that in some way.
Mm-hmm. When do you remember first really feeling spirit in your life?
Yeah, I don't know about the word first, but I know that there have been many different points where it feels like it came in at different points. I'll answer it this way. And then I went through a period of agnosticism as I went into teenage years. And then when I think some of the first openings I had was I had a girlfriend who for a couple of years, who she had experiences where people who died came to talk to her, and it was very was very real. It was, without going into detail, it was some very, very believable. And so there was like a sense of, oh, I can really, like, there was some transmission there. I could really feel what she's talking about. And at the same time, I was going through paramedic training because I was a paramedic for quite some time. And I remember studying anatomy and physiology and going, there has to be a God. This is too complex. This is and so there was like this combination of science and mysticism that opened me up to starting to experience things again. And when I say again, is that I'm sure, I remember those feelings of connectedness, and as a very young child, kind of in a kind of a vague, oh yeah, this feels really familiar, but it became a lot more conscious, obviously, when I was older.
Wow. I feel it coming in as you're talking about that. It's like about the experience of your girlfriend, and also that kind of a numinous moment where you can't quite articulate, but you're just aware of miraculousness.
Right.
Even in the mundane, even in just sort of our the flesh and bone. Would you tell me then a little bit about how that grew in your life? Like, how did you, because now you're a master teacher of Sufism, how did you get from paramedic who are having sort of mystical notions to becoming a master teacher?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there were some significant times when I met the woman who's my wife now. We've been together for 20 years. She was studying with the Reclaiming Collective, Starhawk's Reclaiming Collective, on the teacher track, and we were in the San Francisco Bay Area. So she was studying with Starhawk, and we were also part of a Jewish Renewal community, and this Jewish Renewal community was Queer Minion was. Renewal, Jewish renewal is bringing this sense of spiritual connection back to Judaism. And again, I won't go into the whole history of that, but it's an amazingly beautiful experience. And I just and so we were starting to regularly do Shabbat with this minyan, with this community, and we were involved with the Reclaiming Collective, and I just want
to, because
yeah.
I'm familiar with Starhawk's work, but can you just sort of give people a sense of what's the Reclaiming?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's like, so Starhawk is a neo-pagan teacher, if you want to use that term. Wicca is generally the, I guess, umbrella term for that, and it's really trying to refine or reconnect with an earth-based spirituality that is embedded in the seasons and embedded in the oneness that arises out of nature, and often traces its history back to a lot of Celtic, but it comes from other traditions as well. And so we were doing that, and eventually our path led us more deeply into Judaism. I mean, that's our history, and I never felt that strong a connection to the Celtic rituals. It's just not where my being is, right? And so so we were in this and so the question, so I began to have these experiences and these rituals where my heart was being open, and I was experiencing these pieces. And then in the chanting in Judaism, we were doing a lot of chanting and singing, and just totally transported. There's no singing in my family growing up, and to have that sense of really being inside. There's a rabbi, Shefa Gold, and she talks about how when you chant, the chanting is building a temple, and you get to sit inside the temple in the silence afterwards. And I began to really experience the reality of that with this Jewish chanting. And there's also something that was very resonant for me, because remember I was saying earlier that, these words in these prayer books, like, I want to believe them, but I'm not feeling it. And yet because I can feel the tears coming up now, it's like in chanting, this ancient tongue that's been prayed by countless people over millennia, not centuries, but millennia. It's been so it was so amazing and nourishing. Again, many more numinous transportive moments there, and yeah, just very, very profound for me. And then eventually coming to Sufism, another piece in the puzzle is that my wife, the year before we got married, when we got engaged, she came down with Lyme's disease. It
Oh,
flared up in her system really badly, and we went from being on a 250-mile bicycle tour to the next week she couldn't walk upstairs,
oh
and
my gosh.
it was very intense and scary. And she was sick for years and years and years, and part of the healing journey eventually led us to a Sufi healer, and that was the next connection, was um, starting to see this, she getting really profound healings from Sufism, from the Sufi healer, and then coming out of a healing session and saying something to me. We had been um, having some conflict over a topic in our relationship, and she said something to me directly after the session that she had with one of the master teachers, leading teachers in this school, and whatever she said, I can't even remember the exact words. It I could feel it changing me on a cellular level, and I just said, "Okay, I'm done. We're done." And not done with the relationship, but the issue was done. Like I was able to just let go of it, and it was over. And
So, can you explain then just the religious tradition that Sufism comes from, just so we can kind of locate where we've moved now into
yes,
the
yes.
traditions?
Well, this is the interesting part: is that Sufism is the mystical side of Islam. So, um, for me as a Jew becoming involved with Islam,
Yeah, exactly.
it
I'm
was
like, let's just really clarify where we've
it was
gone now.
no, it was, and she started, went up over the summer with the sheikh was visiting from Jerusalem. This is not, this particular brand of Sufism that we're in is not, just a, I don't, I, you know, I, it's a very Islamic path. I mean, the head sheikh works, lives on the Mount of Olives. He's associated as one of the teachers with the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, one of the third holiest site in Islam. I mean, it was really intense. And she went and met him, and over the summer, not in Jerusalem, but I didn't want to go. He was visiting somewhere 2 hours north of where we were. I said, "Don't go becoming a Sufi on me." And of course, she came back saying, "I've taken hand with this sheikh," and taken hand means, join the lineage, and taking and it receiving the transmission of being in the lineage. And I was like, huh.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then
like, were you like, so mom, dad, my wife is,
no, I don't.
like, I
I
mean,
have to say, I love my parents. I talk to them very regularly, and I think in many ways, I'm been a little incomprehensible to them. They're like non-spiritual. I mean, my mom,
okay.
they're spiritual in some senses, but they're not. They're, they've
They're sort of culturally
they
Jewish
could.
more than spiritually Jewish.
Well, and I would say that I and my parents, it's like one of these, I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this, right? It's like, I don't understand how I grew up in this family, 'cause it's like, I feel like I'm in a lot of love, a lot of closeness, and just completely culturally different. There's so much of my life that I think my parents just couldn't understand. My dad was vice president of his high school class, and I was a punk, who
Yeah.
got suspended, and, I just, all of these things that were just very much, they're very deeply conservative politically, and and I'm pretty far left.
Yes.
And so it's very um and spiritually, I think they just don't comprehend. So no, it's been more of kind of a don't ask, don't tell policy with them. um
So you're embracing a very conservative policy at home as it
yes,
works, whereas
well, I
in
just
your business you're very
well,
left.
yeah, well, they've read my books, at least one of my books, I've mentioned it to them. I've told them things, but they've never asked for anything. I've been to the residential. I did my master's in divinity, and I studied at the Sufi retreat center that's actually 2 hours from my parents' house, and they took me there and dropped me off, and I had to warn them, saying, you're going to meet people that are going to call me by my Sufi name. That's Abdulaziz. And anyway, so
Yeah.
they've heard these things. It's not like it's being hidden, but they've never asked for more. And I just
Right. Okay, so I would love to bring in how this has completely infused your life, though, because you are a business and marketing coach and teacher, as well as a spiritual healer and leader. And actually your tagline for Heart of Business is every act of business can be an act of love.
Yes.
And so it sort of sounds like there's sort of special considerations around spirituality at home, and it works really well. Do you have sort of special considerations when you're infusing your business with your spiritual beliefs? Like, I assume you don't only work with Sufis. I know that you don't only work with Sufis. We actually have clients in common, so I know that that's not the case. So how did you then approach bringing and infusing your business with your spiritual life? I mean, so you stopped being a paramedic, you were working in marketing, and then now you're basically spiritually healing the business world.
That's a little bit of a grand claim, but yes, we're trying to bring, we're witnessing the love that's present in business that's hard to see, and helping make that more conscious and accessible. And I guess what I would say, business is deeply dysfunctional. It's deeply dysfunctional, and it has been for centuries. And there are many people who are really trying to make a difference, and they end up self-employed because there's no job description, or they want to be self-employed, or what have you, bringing healing, transformational work, or even just doing what they want to do. It might not even be explicitly transformational work, but the way they're doing it from the heart, it is. And we need to embrace a presence of love, being able to experience love and express love and work with love in business in very practical ways. A lot of spirituality in business has been boiled down to, okay, fill up on the meditation cushion, fill up your gas tank, and then when you run down in business, come and fill up again. In my belief, the Sufi practice, a lot of spiritual paths work with this as well, but Sufism in particular has the desire to witness the presence of the divine in everything. There's that quote from the Quran that everyone non-Islamic attributes to Rumi, but it's from the Quran. It's like, wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. And you can find the presence of love in everything. The question I like to ask often is love available even here? And in fact, that was like the birth of Heart of Business, and the work that I'm doing now is when I saw the spiritual healing that I was learning, a template for the spiritual healing and the teachings behind it, and I was shown or saw that, oh, that's the same as this marketing message template that I see over here. And when they're overlaid with that type of intention, I realized, like, oh, marketing isn't just about getting clients. Like, the marketing itself can be healing. Whether or not somebody comes to you and buys from you, the marketing itself can have value if you have this sense of connection. And the sense of witnessing, being able to witness what's there. And if you can't find it, then those are probably business practices that can be discarded, and you can find other business practices that do connect with love.
So do you and your wife never fight now then?
I have to say that we do fight, but we don't have, in fact, we were just talking up in the kitchen earlier. I love working at home, being able to do that, but it's she was just saying, because she was talking with a friend who had been explaining some challenges they were having in their relationship. And she was just saying, I'm just so grateful we don't have that. Like, all of our problems that we have are on the surface, meaning that, because we have 6-year-old twin boys in kindergarten, and life is very full, and we don't often have as much connection time with each other as we want. We get disconnected with each other, or we get tired, and so we get snappy with each other. But it's been years and years and years since we've had like a serious, what I would call a serious fight. It's more like, we yell at each other or snap at each other, and then one of us, she'll say to me, I don't like the way you're being. And I said, of course you don't like the way I'm being. I'm being controlling, and so,
Right.
and then we laugh.
Right.
So it's one of the benefits also of being in a relationship for 20 years, that there's there's an intimacy there, that and a trust there. So
Nice.
it helps.
Okay, so this is a beautiful segue then, because the last question on the Numinous podcast traditionally comes from the Proust questionnaire. So the question is, what do you consider perfect happiness?
There's a saying in Sufism that says, be expectant in divine generosity, and be patient with divine decree. And and it's kind of, it's the the more Sufi version of, like, take what, hope for the best and take what comes.
Right.
And I don't believe in a set perfection. Perfection belongs to the divine, and as human beings we can taste it, but we don't stay there. We go in and out. And so I kind of cling to that. I don't even like to think of it in that sense. Perfect happiness is not a phrase I would ever use. I would be more inclined to reach for a contentedness with where I am, and the ability to witness the love that's moving where I am, and then feel the nourishment of the love and the presence of where I am. And saying that sounds very enlightened and holy and everything, and I don't live there. But I can touch it and reach it, and I'm grateful when I can.
That's beautiful. Well, and I'm grateful to witness the love that I definitely feel coming through you. So thank you so much for sharing and for being on the show today, Mark.
Delighted. Such interesting questions. Thank you so much.
Did he bring up enough to make you look twice, or what? I mean, what did we cover there? Agnosticism, science, mysticism, Judaism, Sufism, reclaiming, Jewish renewal. I mean, yeah, what an interesting guy. I really enjoyed that conversation. I especially liked how Mark described what he does at Heart of Business when he said that he's just witnessing the love that's present in business that's hard to see. That's very sweet and very, very touching. If you enjoyed this interview, please share this show far and wide, because there's seekers out there just like you, and you never know who needs to hear it right now. And I would love for Mark's message to be spread around the world. And I want to thank my listeners from around the world for tuning in. And this week's shout out is to the listeners in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hello. My goodness, how do you even find the Numinous podcast? And also, hola to the listeners in Costa Rica, one of the most beautiful places on earth. Love to go back someday. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And of course, as always, if you enjoyed the show and would like to review it on iTunes, I would love that. And I will thank you personally on air. For more information about Mark and all of the show notes for today, just go to my website, carmenspagnola.com, CarmenSpagnola, and just click the link for the podcast tab. You'll get all the information about Mark and Heart of Business there. And of course, if you'd like to keep exploring the great mystery of life with me, you can sign up for my monthly email newsletter. You'll instantly receive a free meditation download, and you'll get something free from me every month. Until next time, take care.